What is a red flag from an employer that people might not immediately recognize as a red flag?
A couple old senior partners, lots of young employees and nothing in between. That means there's no opportunity to move up, they can't get people to stay, and can't get lateral transfers. They work young folks for as long as they can, and the young folks leave once they figure out the company sucks.
Everybody is very young in a very old company.
Had an interview somewhere they offered 20 to 23 starting. Being new in this field, when they asked how much I was expecting to be paid, I said, well, you guys are offering 20 to 23 starting, and being new in the field I think 20 would be good. Their response was, oh, well, that's kind of a red flag for us. Usually when someone starts with us they'll say, I'll take $17 until I can prove to you that I'm worth the $20. So you'll see why we're hesitant. My response, then why would you offer $20 at your low end? I didn't get a call back.
When you don't get a review until you ask for a raise. Then, all of a sudden, your work is being questioned and you're being berated.
They claim that overtime isn't mandatory and workers stay longer by choice.
The job title says they're looking to hire rock stars.
When they refuse to tell you what your starting salary would be, or when they just avoid the question altogether. Like I didn't apply to the job to be a part of some family work culture. I came here to get a job and be paid.
Asking if I plan to have children in the interview. I was 19.
Asking if you are somebody who's willing to put in the time to make sure deadlines are met, work is done, or if you're the type of person who leaves when the workday is finished. This is generally corporate speak for, we will be forcing you to work unpaid overtime.
Trying to rush a decision out of you once the offer is made. I once interviewed with a company where I would have been relocating across the country to work for them. There were 3 rounds of interviews and they left me completely in the dark 4 weeks on end between each round before inviting me to the next round within just a few days of when the interview would take place. After the final interview it was over a month of silence from them until they made an offer but told me I had less than 24 hours to let them know my decision. I would have been moving 2,000 miles away from home to a place I had never been or even seen before. Interviews were completely virtual. They wanted me to start 6 days after the offer had been made. When I asked if there was any flexibility for me to have more time to think it over or have more time to move out there, they said no. They needed the decision the next day, and if I accepted I would be starting in less than a week. I declined the offer.
There's a misery wall when walking into work. When you pass a certain point in the building the feeling changes significantly. If you know, you know.
If the job description has a nondescriptively massive salary range, $25,000 to $100,000.
Any job ad that doesn't mention the name of the company should raise suspicions, doubly so if it's anything to do with sales. Got done by that trick once. Turned up to the interview and the job was going door to door selling vacuums for Kirby Vacuums.
Anything that the manager says in the interview that doesn't line up with the job description. Yay, we posted it's a manager level position, but this is actually a coordinator role. Yay, the description says travel is 25%, but it might be closer to 50%, it just depends. We did post it as a remote job, but we prefer people to be in the office X days a week. Yay, we phrase it that way in the job description because corporate says we have to. All of those are red flags. Anything a company is vague about should be a red flag.
The sink or swim technique. It was my first day as a cashier. I got a couple of hours of training. Then I was by myself and we were dead. All of a sudden this rush came in and I was asking for help. The manager goes, sink or swim? We're busy back here, figure it out. Lol, I did, but let me tell you, customers were not happy because I still didn't know how to properly enter in orders, especially modifications.
I always ask the question, why is this role open? Is it a new role? Or am I replacing someone? Why did that person leave? This really helps you seeing their reaction, and if they look nervous it's because the person who left did it because they were not happy. I also like asking how senior my team members are. If there's no one there more than 2 years I would also be concerned. Final question. As I work in sales, I always ask, what's the KPIs and how many are actually hitting their quarterly and annual target? This also reveals if they set their targets too high, and you can expect to enter a grim working culture where you're never good enough, and can always do better. Last one. I like asking about how they're working to establish a team culture as well, since this will tell you a lot if people at work are friends, or just there to do their job.
I went on an interview. They had me wait in the lobby. In the 5 minutes I was sitting there, 3 employees walked past me. The first just looked at me and laughed. The second said, "Leave. Leave while you can." The third made the sign of the cross at me. Later, during the interview, the hiring manager showed me the Zen room, which was a quiet room you got to go to for 10 minutes when you got too stressed out. I was offered the job. I declined.
When they say, or try to make you sign, anything pertaining to not discussing your wages with other employees, that crap is illegal and it screams that people aren't being fairly compensated for their work. I've literally up and walked the frick out of jobs for this.
Competitive pay, but they won't tell you what the pay actually is in the posting or even the interview.
I interviewed once at a very huge organization that had a site in the town I was living in, and these guys were so proud of the new top-of-the-line facilities. When they took me on a tour, they pointed out the lovely Zen garden area that was made for employees to go, unwind and clear their heads. The problem with it was this area was positioned directly across from all the higher-ups' offices. Yeah, no.
Poor communication during the hiring process.
They're always hiring.
Open interviews. It tells me that people leave faster than you can bring them in, and with good reason.
To me it was we will start you low and we'll give you a ton of money later. They never do. Never happens.
When an employee quits or gets fired from the job and the company doesn't hire anyone new to replace them. It can be hard to tell as a red flag at first, but the temporary workload they added to your own over that was left over after the person left, slowly becomes your new permanent workload, without any changes to your pay or benefits to compensate for the additional tasks. The further out it goes without the position being filled, the larger and more obvious the red flag becomes.
We're a family here. No, we're coworkers. I don't love you. I wouldn't do anything for you. We have boundaries.
Sorry, no money for your annual raise due to the pandemic. It's a lie.
If you get a tour and everything is old but they say, they're in the process of updating, yeah no they don't update crap. You're going to be working with broken out dates equipment. 9/10 you're going to get in trouble when it breaks on you.
Work hard, play hard, you will work so hard, you and your colleagues will need to get totally fricked up at happy hours to cope with the stress.
We're just like family.
If many provisions in company policy say, except for employees in Colorado and California. Colorado and California have multiple statutes that are more employee-friendly than the other 48 states. So the company policy is basically saying, we'll do X for employees where the state makes us, but frick the rest of you.
It's hard to find good workers these days. Equals. I don't pay enough.
We work hard and we play hard. Translation. We require you to participate in our toxic workplace culture.
The quality of the toilet paper in the bathroom. There are minimal if any cost savings to one ply and it just shows they couldn't care about you at all.
This is such a good question. Here are some thoughts, and for context, I've started several companies, hired a lot of people, and consequently spent a lot of time thinking about how to develop positive cultures. The CEO, boss, whatever drives a conspicuously expensive car. I can elaborate why this is a tell if anyone cares. If it's a private family company, do a Google search for company name, defendant, and company name, plaintiff. If the company has been sued, or is in the habit of suing others, that can be a red flag, although something there are legit reasons for either. But it's something worth paying attention to. If when you are asked to come in for an interview, you are not treated with total respect for your time, for example, if you find yourself waiting for extended periods for an interview because so-and-so is in a really important meeting. Similarly, if you are not offered at least water and or coffee if you're in for several interviews. I once interviewed at a place for 7 straight hours with no break, no food, not even a glass of water. Fortunately, I wasn't offered the job as it was at Michael Milken's firm, before he went to prison. If the company brings alcohol into the office for end-of-week sessions on a regular basis. I know they can be fun, but it's a stupendously bad idea for all kinds of reasons, and if leadership hasn't figured that out, then I'd think twice before joining. If when you're visiting the company for the first time and you pass someone in a hallway, do they smile and acknowledge your presence with a nod or maybe a hello, or do they ignore you? It's a small thing but very telling about the workplace culture. Similarly, do people seem healthy and energized, or gray-faced and tired? Any bait-and-switch deviations from representations made during the recruiting process versus actual terms, conditions. If it's a job in a manufacturing or distribution facility, is it messy or tidy? Messy, cluttered facilities are indicative of poor management, plus they can be dangerous. As others have noted, any BS about, oh people like to work late, or stuff like that used as pressure to get you to put in extra hours. Last, pay attention to your gut feel. If something feels off, it probably is.
We work hard and play harder usually means we like to be nosy about your personal life.
Referring to the company as family. Employers are not your family. Family can't fire you. Saying you are work fam, or anything else is a guilt trip to make you leave your real family and work extra hours for no pay. My company does this and it grosses me out. It works on our young hires but the older ones roll their eyes. Oh, and saying, this isn't your typical 9 to 5. That means you are on call 24/7. Also companies that have a cult following and make up their own words. Run, just run.
I know people, rightfully, like to hate on HR, but if a company brags about not having an HR department to deal with, expect them to be very disorganized at a minimum.
Nobody works here for the money. Why should they work there, then?
At my job interview I got asked, how do you deal with drama in the workplace? Looking back, I was so stupid to accept that job.
I once had a job that required a working interview as the final step in the interview process. I basically worked an entire day for free.
They get visibly and vocally freaked out when you tell them you have no social media. The follow-up question of everyone does, you have to, had made me walk out. A company that wants access to my personal family-only social media platforms is not a company I want to work for. I separate my personal and professional life. They have no business knowing about me or my family and anything going on therein. They do not need access to your Facebook, and should they gain it through another employee or other means, I would sue the fricking crap out of them for violating my right to privacy.
We're a good Christian company. I have never been fricked harder by an employer than ones that claim to be religious-based companies.